Welcome to Wiston Estate Vineyard. We're here in the middle of the South Downs National Park, and what's turning into be quite a nice day. We've had a few showers this morning as par for the course in the British summer. We've also got Wimbledon that should be starting this week, so no surprises there that there's been a couple of showers. So I'm James, I'm the vineyard manager on the estate, and today we're going to try and do a bit of a virtual tour. It's all very new for us. We're very used to doing tours for people face to face, and really miss doing that. We thought, here's the sort of next best thing: get you guys out here, show you what's going on, what's happening at this moment. This is quite a crucial time at the moment for us. The vines are going through flowering. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for those who are new to us, so we are a English sparkling wine producer. We planted first in 2006. Winery started 2008 was our first harvest. So we completely focus on sparkling wine. So when assessing the land, we decided that this land was perfect for really high quality sparkling wine. And as a result, we planted the 3 champagne varieties. We planted Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay. So we've got the Pinot Meunier here to our left. So this is to the west of the vineyard. Pinot Meunier, it gets its name from this texture that you see on the leaves. So Meunier, for any French speakers, means miller. Miller in terms of milling flour. And it kind of resembles as though the vines have been dusted with a light covering of flour. So that's what it gets its name from. On the other side of the vineyard, to the east, we've got our Chardonnay. So as the Chardonnay goes along, the hill gets steeper and steeper and steeper. Right at the very end of that Chardonnay, we have our little secret weapon. In there are the vines, actually to begin with, really struggled, didn't look like they were going to make it. We stuck with them, we held on, we gave them an extra year or two, and they began to crop. I mean, they still yield far less than the rest of the vineyard. But what it does do is it means that fruit's fantastic. It's really, really concentrated, offers some fantastic flavours, and actually is now the basis for our Blanc de Blanc. So in good years, in vintage years, that's where we make our base for our Blanc de Blanc. So it's really important to us. So size. So we're currently 10 hectares. This is the original planting we're in now, 6.5 hectares. We've got a new vineyard, which actually excitingly is going to crop for the first time this year. So we're excited to see the results of that. This vineyard we're planted with, as I say, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. Chardonnay is roughly about half of our plantings. We've got a third Pinot Noir, and then the rest Pinot Meunier. The one sort of interesting fact about it, we've got 40,000 vines on the estate, and that actually equals about 50 kilometres of vines. So a lot of vines when you add it all up. I mean, we're still a drop in the ocean when you compare us to even English vineyards. We're still a moderate size English vineyard, but certainly in terms of the world, we're tiny, 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 tiny. So we touched on terroir, soil, where the vineyards are. We talked about the South Downs. The South Downs really are very famous for their chalk. So we've got tons and tons of chalk in the vineyard. We've come to this part of the vineyard just because it gives a really nice soil profile. You can sort of see what the vines are planted in and what they're working with. So we've got here, as you can see, a very shallow, I mean it's a foot maybe in parts, up to 2 feet max of topsoil. That topsoil it's predominantly made of clay, but broken up with a lot of flint and a lot of stone. And then really after that we're down straight into this bedrock chalk. And this chalk really is key. It's what's caused the foundations of sparkling wine, full stop really. So this chalk travels all the way down through the south coast, through the South Downs, all the way to Dover and the cliffs of Dover, and it goes under the Channel, and then it reappears in Normandy in France, and that travels all the way down through Paris down to the Champagne region. And most notably in the Côte de Blanc, the famous Côte de Blanc, where you see this chalk reappear. So it's really key. I mean, The other thing to sort of mention, obviously the French, there's a bit of controversy over who actually invented the champagne method and the method for making sparkling wine. Obviously a lot of people, there's the Dom Perignon story, there's a lot of people also think Mr. Merritt in England also, he wrote a paper on it just 20 or 30 years before Dom Perignon. We don't really get, I don't like to pin my hat to any story in particular, as far as I'm concerned as well really. It's a bit like the England football team that remind us every 4 years that it doesn't really matter who invented the game, it's really who got it right. And every 4 years we've proven wrong. So really it's all about this chalk. Why is chalk so important? So the chalk's important really for the main reason is drainage. So vines don't like to be in wet environments, they like very dry soil. This chalk's fantastic because it just, like a sponge, it sucks up any moisture. And as like a sponge, it also holds on to a certain amount of critical water. So the vines, if they do need it in very dry years like 2018, there's always enough water for them to access if they require it. So chalk's quite key. The other thing as well is because it drains so well, it also leaches a lot of nutrients. So you end up with quite a sparse, nutrient low soil, which for vines is quite important because we are actually trying to stress the vine slightly. So to produce fruit, you need to stress the vine. To get it to go into that reproductive cycle rather than its vegetative cycle, you need to stress it, make it think, okay, I need to spread, I need to get elsewhere, this isn't a habitable environment. And to do that, it produces seeds in fruit. And that fruit obviously is key to winemaking. Without that, you can't do an awful lot. Right, so back in the vineyard, we are now in our Pinot Noir. So we're right at the very end of our Pinot Noir. This is our Dijon clone area. So these are predominantly Burgundian red wine clones, 114, 115 for any wine geeks out there. But these vines, as I say, are predominantly used for red winemaking. So they're very low yielding, they give very high concentration, good colour, good flavour profile. And we use this in our rosé for our red wine, and we also use it in our Blanc de Noir. So the Blanc de Noir in particular really benefits from the ripeness that these vines can give off. So we did touch on the soil briefly earlier, and the compost. So compost, this is the compost we use. So we actually make it ourselves. We've got a big clamp just around the corner. What we use for it is, there you go, some worms in there as well. That's always a good sign. So what we use is we use a local stable. We get all of their horse manure and all the bedding that goes with it. So lots of organic matter, very low nitrogen and very low nutrient content. And with that, we mix all the grape skins from the winery. So after we've pressed the fruit, we get all those skins, rot them down with the horse manure, and what we get after a couple of years is this lovely compost that we use. We put this down. Really, I mean, as I said before, there's very little nutrient in there. The only nutrients do really come from the grape skins. The idea really behind it is so we're trying to minimise the amount we take from the vineyard. So when we take the fruit away, obviously that's an output. We press off the juice and then bring the skins and put them back in. So the only thing really we're losing is the juice. Within that juice, obviously, there's very minimal nutrition. So the idea is we're trying to put everything back in that we took out. And that means that we can really limit everything else that we do then have to put on. And that's quite a key sort of thing for us. So yeah, that's really important, and you can sort of see the colour difference in that, and that's really going to enrich that soil, help with holding on to some of those nutrients that are already still in the soil. And the other big part of the way we like to maintain our soil is by using, well, this is part of it. So this is our Burgundian, it's called a boisselet. It's an undervine cultivator. So to take out the weeds, you can see, we've got a bit of grass, a few weeds around. That we like to see. I hate seeing vineyards where it's just completely scorched earth herbicide. For me, it looks awful, and you just think like all that chemical going down on the ground. So we've gone down the route of using mechanical means, and with this, basically, it's just a blade that goes just under the soil. So normally, just under an inch under the soil, drags through behind the tractor, and just takes all of these little roots up and brings all of those weeds out. It's a lot more. It's a lot lighter way of doing it. Takes a lot more time. We could, if we did just herbicide, we'd only need to do 2 or 3 passes a year. With this, it's more like 4 or 5. Obviously, it takes a lot longer as well. You've got to drive an awful lot slower. But it's all down to maintaining that soil structure. And for us, you know, this vineyard, we're going to want to replant it in 20, 30 years' time. And when we do replant it, we want to know what we're planting back into is as good as when we first planted the vines, if not better. If we can improve it, that's even better. So it's all about sustainability and longevity for us. And yeah, that's the soil. I mean, so at the moment we've got going through flowering here. So these are the flowers. They're pretty underwhelming, as you can see. There's no big petals, not lots of lovely colour, very little in the way of fragrance as well. When the whole vineyard's flowering, you might just about be able to catch a scent, but on the whole, they're pretty much flowerless. This I mentioned earlier about the weather at flowering. So no rain's key because, as I said earlier, they're self-pollinating. But the problem is if one of these little caps gets stuck on top, gets wet and gets stuck on top, there's no way of the pollen moving from one part of the vine to the other. And that can be disastrous if we get poor conditions, poor flowering. Each one of those is a berry. So every one that doesn't pollinate doesn't turn into fruit for us. So it's one of the key reasons actually why English fruits, why our wines are so good is because our flowering conditions are generally pretty poor. So we generally get quite low yields. That, again, like our vines over in the Chardonnay, means that we end up with quite concentrated styles of wines. So thank you to all of you who've stuck with us. I hope you've enjoyed it and you've got something from it. Obviously, we can't wait to see you all back in the vineyard again properly. It's far nicer when you can actually have the tasting at the end of it as well. So yeah, we've got a few other little bits coming up in our little series of online videos. So we're going to be doing a chat with Pip and Harry. So Pip, who is responsible for the estate, and Harry, whose family have owned the estate for years and years and years. Which will be really interesting actually. There's a few stories in there that even I didn't know. And then we've got Dermot and Kirsty after that, delving back into the archives, getting deep in the dungeon to find some rare wines for us to sort of go through and have a little talk about. Stay tuned, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.